Barron Trump had never imagined himself walking through the grand halls of the Vatican, a place steeped in history and solemnity. He had seen it in photographs, of course, but nothing could prepare him for the magnitude of the towering stone walls, the intricate carvings, and the echoes of centuries-old discussions that had shaped much of the world's moral compass. As he entered the holy city, it felt like stepping into a different realm, one where every footstep reverberated through time. He had been summoned here not just as the son of a former president, but as an individual with his own identity, his own thoughts, and his own journey. The Vatican's officials had invited him after public criticisms of his father's policies, and this meeting, as they called it, was meant to be cordial. But Barron had always known that the weight of his last name carried expectations far beyond simple pleasantries. "Mr. Trump, welcome," Cardinal Giuseppe greeted him warmly, his voice calm but filled with authority. "It is rare that we speak to a person of your position, but I believe this conversation will transcend politics." Barron nodded, still processing the weight of the situation. He wasn't used to being treated as an individual in such high-profile settings. The focus was almost always on his father, and yet here, in these hallowed halls, the attention seemed to be squarely on him. "I appreciate the invitation, Cardinal," Barron replied, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, not knowing exactly what to expect. "I hope our conversation can be productive." As they walked deeper into the Vatican, the corridors grew quieter, the sounds of distant conversations fading into the background. Barron was struck by how serene everything was. It was a place of reflection, of thoughtfulness, and for once he felt like he might actually be heard. The meeting began with formal pleasantries, but it quickly shifted to a more profound discussion. Barron found himself sitting across from several cardinals and clergymen, their faces thoughtful as they spoke of faith, morality, and the state of the world. "Your father's policies have certainly stirred a great deal of controversy," Cardinal Giuseppe said, leaning forward slightly. "But we are not here to debate politics. We are here to understand how you, as a young man, see the world." Barron felt a slight tension in his chest at the mention of his father's policies, but he steadied himself. "I don't always agree with everything my father did," he admitted, his voice soft but firm. "But I believe he acted based on his understanding of what he thought was best for the country." The room fell silent for a moment, the cardinals exchanging glances. Barron wasn't sure what kind of reaction he expected, but he had said his truth, the truth that he had always kept private, even from those closest to him. "I respect that," one of the cardinals said, his tone gentle. "But we must ask ourselves, what is the cost of that truth? What about empathy? What about humanity?" Barron's mind began to race. These weren't questions he had ever really considered in depth. Sure, he had heard them in passing on the news, in public debates, but he had never been asked to confront them directly. "Empathy," Barron repeated, the word unfamiliar on his tongue. "It's not something I've thought about much, but I understand it. I think I do." Another cardinal, a young man named Father Lorenzo, leaned forward. "Tell me, Barron, what does it mean to truly listen to someone, to hear them not just as a representative of a side, but as a person with their own fears, hopes, and dreams?" Barron paused, trying to grasp the depth of the question. He had spent his life in the public eye, always seen as the son of Donald Trump. People never really listened to him for who he was. But here, in the Vatican, surrounded by people who seemed genuinely interested in his thoughts, Barron felt something stir inside him, a longing to connect on a deeper level. "I guess it means seeing the world from their perspective," Barron said after a long pause, his voice quieter now. "Understanding that everyone has their own story, even if it's different from mine." Father Lorenzo smiled, his eyes warm. "Exactly. That is empathy, Barron. That is the beginning of true connection." The conversation continued long into the afternoon, touching on topics of justice, morality, and the role of faith in the modern world. Barron listened intently, absorbing every word. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about something much more fundamental, the human condition. As the hours passed, Barron found himself reflecting on everything he had heard. The cardinals had challenged him, but they had also given him space to explore his own beliefs. By the time the meeting was drawing to a close, Barron felt different change in a way he couldn't quite explain. "You came here thinking this would be a simple political discussion," Cardinal Giuseppe said as he stood to leave. "But perhaps it was something far greater." Barron stood as well, looking out the window at the setting sun. The Vatican had always seemed like a place of judgment to him, but now, after this conversation, it felt like a place of understanding. For the first time in his life, Barron felt that he had been truly seen, not as a political figure, not as the son of a president, but as an individual with his own thoughts, his own struggles, and his own aspirations. "I came here expecting answers," Barron said quietly, "but I'm leaving with more questions, more understanding." Father Lorenzo nodded, his eyes full of compassion. "That's the point, Barron. The answers come when you're willing to ask the right questions." As Barron left the Vatican, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just begun a journey not just about the world, but about himself. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace about his own identity and a desire to seek out answers, not just for himself, but for the world around him. As the doors of the Vatican closed behind him, Barron felt a profound shift within himself. For the first time, he wasn't just the son of a former president. He wasn't defined by the legacy of his father or the expectations of the world around him. Standing in the quiet aftermath of his visit, Barron's mind began to race not with the noise of politics, but with something much deeper. His heart, once weighed down by the burden of others' perceptions, now felt lighter. A sense of clarity emerged, one that seemed to come from within, not from the people who had always told him who he should be. "What if I don't have to follow the path that's been laid out for me?" Barron thought. "What if there's another way, a way that's true to who I am, not just who people expect me to be?" The conversations with the cardinals had opened a door he hadn't known existed. They hadn't just offered him advice, they had shown him a new perspective, a way of seeing the world not through the lens of power, but through empathy and understanding. For the first time in his life, Barron didn't feel the weight of expectation crushing him. Instead, he felt an invitation to explore, to learn, and to grow. "I don't have all the answers. I don't have to," he whispered to himself. "But I can start by listening. Really listening. I can lead with my heart, not my name." The world, Barron realized, was far more complex and beautiful than he had ever allowed himself to understand. It wasn't just about politics or power. It was about connection, about understanding the human experience, and about giving others the respect and empathy they deserve. Barron had spent so many years trying to live up to an ideal that had never been his own, but now he felt the freedom to chart his own course. As he walked away from the Vatican, Barron knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a journey, one that would be shaped by the lessons he had learned and by the values he was now ready to embrace. The path ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time, Barron wasn't afraid. He knew that as long as he continued to listen, to learn, and to lead with compassion, he would find his way. And as the sun set behind the Vatican, casting a golden glow over the streets of Rome, Barron whispered to himself, "I'll figure it out, and when I do, it will be my truth." Vatican holds cordial talks with Barron Trump after criticisms of Trump policies. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.